For me, I really like to see that kind of outcome-driven project. While I don't always believe that the outcome is the only outcome, when there is a creative outcome, you know, you see it in people's behavior, the way that they change, the way that they feel that confidence that they have done something and they've contributed something.
So hello everyone, hope you're doing well, hope you're looking after yourselves. Welcome back to another episode of The Student Guide, where we discuss important topics and speak to amazing figures doing incredible work to support both yourselves or maybe to support people that you know. We bring on these great guests who are showcasing not only work that's impacting the next generation, but is also impacting the current generation of today. And we've got another amazing guest speaker who's, funnily enough, related to not only our MC of the month, but also in the space we're recording in. Because as you can see, we're recording at the Roundhouse. But as you know, I don't like to do introductions. I like for you guys to hear from our guest speakers. So I'm going to hand over to Nathan. Nathan, could we know a bit more about you and what you do?
Wow, what a platform. Hello, my name is Nathan Tuft. My current role is Senior Youth Work Manager here at the Roundhouse. I've been in this role for around 2.5 years. Which seems like it's absolutely flown by. But kind of previously, I've worked in a lot of kind of youth work spaces, mainly around kind of community youth work and working alongside young people to kind of, I guess, get the most out of themselves, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, it's a job that I've been doing, I kind of worked out a couple of days ago. I've been doing it for about 17 years now. So it's kind of come out to about half of my life, which has just given away my age. But yeah, for about 17 years, I've done it. So yeah, it's kind of all I've ever known what to do, really.
Well, that's perfect. And we're going to give a round of applause because that's incredible work. And yes, we will be diving into all the different experiences that you've done, both, looking back at the early days to most recently with your job at the Roundhouse. But with that in mind, let's start off with the first question, which is, we'd love to know what sparked your interest in youth work and how did volunteering, because based on your bio, you mentioned that you volunteered at the YMCA and Hackney Pirates. So how did that shape your career path?
Yeah, I've spoken about this many times, and I wish I had this kind of revelationary kind of movie-like story that kind of brought me to youth work. And unfortunately, that wasn't there. I went to school. I did okay in my GCSEs, and then kind of went into sixth form, dropped out of sixth form, went to college, dropped out of college. And I think it was more that kind of disassociation with education. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And there was no real clear career paths around me, whether that was kind of within my local area or the kind of peers that I had within kind of the education system and looked up to. There didn't seem to be any kind of viable careers. So I definitely had a few years of not doing a lot, is probably the basic way to say it. I did have jobs. I worked at View Cinemas. I worked at Tesco's. And it was lots of kind of retail jobs, you know, just something to kind of bring the money in. And then the volunteering came as a little bit of a kind of, I guess, a bit of a coincidence. So I was kind of out and about, and there were people kind of campaigning on the streets talking about the YMCA, which used to be on Holloway Road in Highbury and Islington, and they were looking for volunteers for a youth project, which was called Youth Voice Matters. And it was a 6-week programme supporting 15, 17-year-olds in their local area to basically talk about what issues that they cared about and what they'd like to kind of challenge and change. And I thought, why not? Let's give it a go. I did it with a friend. That friend immediately dropped out on day one. And I thought, you know what, this is something that I'm going to stick at. I really enjoyed it. And at that point, I was around 18, 19. So not a massive age gap between the kind of young people that I was working with, but still kind of held that element of a role model and someone to look up to. And I really enjoyed that. I liked that actually I was in a place of kind of real power, and I don't mean that as kind of in a dictatorship way, but I was in a place of power where it was actually the words that I said resonated with people. So doing that and going through that 6-week process, I really enjoyed it. That then opened my eyes up to kind of other stuff within my local area. Places like Hackney Pirates, kind of worked with school children on kind of storytelling. So that I kind of started to pick up lots of different experiences. And the more I went through these experiences, all unpaid, all voluntary jobs, alongside kind of paid work, that's where I was finding my value. So I got to a kind of point in my life where I was like, actually, this is something that I really enjoy. And I want to find out more. And that's kind of what led down the line and kind of wanting to find out a little bit more about the industry, the sector, and kind of what that looked like, really.
Oh, Perfect, thank you. And that really links into our mic check, which, as you guys know, is an interesting fact or figure that relates to the topic that we're talking about today. And today's one is basically, it says that in the UK, it's estimated that there's around 700,000 young people aged 16 to 24 who are not in education, employment, or in training. And as clearly as you mentioned from your story, it's very clear to see the importance that youth work and youth advocacy and social work can have on not only supporting students that don't necessarily follow the traditional academic path, but also showing them that those other opportunities do exist. Because as you mentioned, even looking back when I was sort of doing my GCSEs, you're not always showed, like, the way that apprenticeships and internships are sort of spoken about now was not the same when I was back at secondary school. So to know that there are other options, and to know, as you mentioned, like through your own journey, that you've been able to see, well, those opportunities were shared with you and you were able to get those is really great. So yeah, thank you very much.
No, and I think, that as a fact and a figure is by no means surprising. And I think we are now in a current climate where there are a lot more choices for young people, whether that be kind of apprenticeships or, MVQs or more vocational courses for young people, that there are a lot more options for young people to kind of take part in and get involved in. I think the barrier is, how do we let young people know about that? And where do we put that value on those kind of subjects and courses? I think there is still inherently a really clear career path for young people that is laid out for them from a very young age. You do your GCSEs, you do your A-levels, and you go to university. And that is almost seen as kind of plan A. Where for some young people, that's not a choice. I did go to university. I went to university kind of 3 or 4 years after I was meant to, in the kind of general scheme of life. And I don't know if that's kind of really promoted to young people, to kind of go to university at a later date or not go to university at all, whether that be a vocational course and apprenticeship. So whereas I feel that the options are out there, and I think the government do a lot of work in ensuring that there are alternative choices, I still don't think there's enough value put upon them where young people themselves want to say, I want to go and do that,
100%. And it's definitely true. And even sort of speaking to my old manager, she works at a university and she does STEM outreach work. She was saying that, as you mentioned, for a lot of young people that they're going into schools, they're speaking to them, sort of seeing, are you interested in sort of getting into the field of STEM and doing things like that? A lot of them are saying no. Like, as soon as I finish my A-levels or finish college, I want to just go straight into work because, university is not for me. And she was saying, oh, but there's like as you mentioned, there's vocational courses, there's apprenticeships. A lot of these things can sort of help with other careers. She was saying that a family friend wanted to go into woodwork, and she said that, university is probably not the best course for him, but that's why he's now decided to do an apprenticeship. But as you mentioned, if she didn't know about that, if his parents didn't know about that, then he obviously would have just gone to university, done a degree, maybe have ended in a career that he didn't want to, when his passion and his sort of, like, the things that he enjoys is woodwork. So as you mentioned, it's just getting that information out there is really key and definitely important. But yeah, we're going to go on to the next question. It sort of links to what you were discussing about your studies, because we'd like to know how your degree essentially helped to contribute to your approach in community-based youth work and supporting vulnerable young people.
Yeah, so I went to university. My plan of action was always to kind of go into university to study social work. That was always something that I wanted to do. And even when I went through kind of UCAS and got my kind of offers from universities, a lot of them were offering kind of youth work and community work, but I was still kind of steadfast that I wanted to do social work because I believed at the time that it had that kind of prestige to it. It was also, at that point, it was an NHS funded course. Unfortunately, it's not anymore. So that kind of took the contribution of fees away, which was perfect. So I went in social work really wanting to understand the processes behind it. And I mean that from a real kind of process driven way, but also the legislation. What is the law that affects young people in many different ways, whether that be the Mental Health Act, whether that be kind of children in need, whether that be kind of vulnerable adults, whatever that may be. I really wanted to understand what that policy was that guided kind of the work that people did in that sector. So I really enjoyed that part and really kind of picked up on that. I do like kind of analytics and data, and I really enjoyed kind of getting into the research of that. But I'd say the biggest part about uni that I really enjoyed and something that's kind of molded me from now was my placements. My first placement at university was a place called Cellar Space, which is in Sheffield, and was in an area which had kind of very low economic kind of structure and didn't have many options for young people, especially that kind of teenage age. So this was a faith-based organisation. So it had been started by the church and was basically an alternative provision for young people aged 7 to 14. So young people that were kind of outside or had either been excluded from school or on the verge of being excluded from school, and they would come to this space, which the building was incredible. It was a disused pub that they'd kind of changed and turned into this space. Had a cooking space, a music space, IT area, arts and crafts area, and essentially was kind of promoting that art-based therapy, creative therapy through different forms of work, and it was really incredible. And some of the young people that came there, when you had a young person as young as 8 years old that'd been kicked out of school, but still was managing to engage with someone through some way, shape or form, I found incredibly transformative. And that's what really kind of kicked my thought into thinking, okay, what does community-based youth work look like? So coming out of university and kind of completing my degree, I realised quite quickly that social work wasn't what I wanted to do. I definitely wanted to pull elements and things out of that course, but that wasn't the area that I wanted to go into. For me, social work is a very reactive piece of work. You hear about social workers that kind of get involved at, the pinch points of young people's lives when that crisis happens. And I wanted to be there a long time before that. I wanted to be really kind of doing a lot of the proactive work, working with young people really early in that relationship and whatever they were doing. So, university really kind of taught me and opened my eyes to what that looked like, whether that be alternative provision, community-based youth work, but also that legislation and law, which I'd like to think, even till now, I always try and kind of keep abreast of in terms of what's going on within the sector.
Yeah, no, definitely. And thank you very much for that. Because I think, I guess two things to touch on is one, as you mentioned, the importance of placements when you're at university to figure out what you want to do. We've mentioned it on the podcast. It's helped me personally to figure out what I wanted to do after graduating. It's helped friends. And it is such a key experience that whether the placement sort of goes the way you want it to or not, there's so much that you can sort of gain from getting that practical experience while you're still at university. But additionally, as you said, I think it's really important that you mentioned not only the work that you're doing is quite reactive, you're getting sort of the feedback from the young people that you're working with, but you're also keeping sort of up to date with legislation and how that can also be used to sort of implement the work that you're doing and the approach that you take. Because I think sometimes people think those two are separate and then they're things that can never overlap and sort of work together or be influenced by each other. But as you mentioned, that's clearly not the case.
No, and I think that's definitely right. And I think, in terms of that, being kind of ingrained in it, I think any profession you do, you do have to take the time to understand and, really research the work that you're doing in the kind of field and sector that you are in. Because essentially it only makes you a better professional. If you go in thinking that the best way to work and that's the only way to work, you'll learn very quickly that's not the way that's not the way it's going to work. So I think in the 10 years that it's been now since I kind of finished university, I've evolved as a professional. I've changed the way that I work. I've changed the way that I interact with young people, but also with different stakeholders, whether that be teachers, community groups, parents, guardians, carers, whoever that may be. And I think you will constantly do that. And I think, what university can help with, especially with those kind of placements, is it can give you those kind of on-job opportunities and really kind of give you that wider experience rather kind of outside of the classroom.
Definitely. I definitely agree. We're going to go on to the next question, which is all about sort of impactful projects and challenges. Now, as you mentioned, you're the senior youth work manager at Roundhouse. And it would be really interesting for us to know, because this whole podcast and sort of sharing this knowledge and advice started during the pandemic. It was a discussion of just a lot of young people and a lot of students didn't know about the support services available to them, especially that a lot of them were free. They didn't need to pay for them. It was something that they could just sort of get involved with and just apply, or maybe just pay a small amount and they can sort of have this for a long period of time. But we'd really like to know, what were some of the challenges or successes, the challenges and successes in creating an embedded team of youth workers, especially during the pandemic, because the pandemic for a lot of people was a tough time. So we'd really love to know a bit more.
Yeah. And I think you've posed the question perfectly there. It's not success or challenges. I think success and challenges, but definitely kind of came at the same time. I kind of joined I always say kind of at the end of the pandemic, but I feel like it's still not ended, and we're still definitely feeling the effects. And I think we'll continue to see the effects on young people for a long period of time. But I joined in October 2021. And the Roundhouse as an organisation had worked with young people for numbers of years and had provided projects and spaces for young people. But I think what the pandemic really taught them was that actually there's a lot going on for young people. There's a lot of complex needs. There's a lot of complex needs. And actually we need to do more in terms of supporting young people. So I came from a background of, my previous role was working, managing a youth centre in northwest London. And, the pandemic was a tough time for young people, but also for us as professionals trying to work with young people. We were kind of impacted by the National Youth Agency, who are kind of they're not a governing body, but they're definitely an advising body that work with the government, and they provided different kind of colour-coded statuses throughout the pandemic, where, at one point we could only work with 6 young people outside 100 metres apart. That was really hard. When you work with vulnerable young people and you want to support them, to kind of pose that as a way to work with young people can be really difficult. It's kind of taking that experience and bringing it into the Roundhouse. It was, okay, what more can we be doing? And youth work had existed at the Roundhouse before me. By no means did I invent it. But it was very much project-based. So, if you had signed up for a project, a 6-week project, you would have that youth worker working with you for that 6 weeks. But then unfortunately, after those 6 weeks, that contact with the youth worker probably ended. So the kind of ask for us was, how do we get teams embedded within the organisation? And the perfect place for that is our creative studios. Our studios are open 7 days a week. We work with hundreds of young people each week, and that seemed like the best place to target young people. So we've built this team now, which kind of now consists of 2 youth work managers, 6 youth workers, and a great kind of team of casual youth workers as well. And essentially means if you come into the studio at any time of the day when we're open, you will get access to a youth worker. And that's pretty much unheard of in terms of cultural organisations. You will always have maybe a pastoral person, one person. They can't be there all the time. But we have a team that, anytime you come into the studios to get involved in our project, you will have access to a youth worker. And for me, I think that's integral. And, something that I preach about quite a bit and would love to see more of in kind of other cultural organisations that work alongside young people. But I think the challenge with that was actually saying what youth work was. When we first started, having our kind of youth workers, we're mainly based at the front desk down on the studios. A lot of young people thought we were receptionists. They just thought we were, standard staff that were there to just check you in, and that was it. So actually the switch for us and the barrier that we found was actually, how do we build these relationships with young people? How do they get to know who we are? How do we get to know who they are? Find out what their needs are, what their wants are, and then how do we react to that? And I would like to think, 2.5 years on, we're definitely at a place now where we've built some really key relationships with young people. Young people know who we are. They know what they can expect from us. And now we're able to deliver on a lot of the things that we kind of want to do. So, yeah, I think that was definitely the challenge, was, I guess, changing the narrative in young people's minds about who we were, but also how we can support as well.
No, definitely. I definitely agree. And I think, as you mentioned, that, well, to my knowledge at least, there isn't another organisation that has, as you mentioned, youth workers supporting and like always embedded in that space. But I think it's also very key, as you mentioned, because young people use, when you look at the creative industries, young people sort of have different approaches to it. There's the, discussion of the topics like neurodiversity is very high within those who sort of work within the creative industries, or maybe founded business within the creative industries, without just the general aspects of being a young person and what they have to deal with as well. So to have someone like a youth worker that you can sort of approach, you can talk to, you can sort of have discussions with in a space where you're feeling safe, you're also creating stuff, you're creating projects and work that you're also proud of is really key, and is very, really important to sort of people's, not only sort of their mental well-being, but also to sort of help them to sort of maybe address certain things that they're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one of those biggest challenges is we never knew what to expect. We never knew the kind of the issues that young people may have been facing. And it took us through kind of those building those relationships and being able to do that we were able to react to that, which by no means was an easy feat. But actually, what it kind of tasks me to do, but also tasks the team to do is, really go out there, find out from young people what we need to do. And whether that's additional training for staff, whether that's sometimes additional staff on additional projects, whatever that may be, how can we kind of react to that? How can we kind of be proactive again in kind of the work that we do to ensure that young people feel safe, feel supported? And essentially the way I always talk about it with young people is that the youth workers are there for you.
100%.
Yes, we're a creative space. I love creativity, but we have great resources, we have great equipment, we have great staff that can kind of talk to you about the creative stuff. Our team are there for you, and sometimes just letting a young person know that means something.
No, definitely, because as you mentioned, like for a lot of young people, they might not always have that, and they might not feel that there is someone in their corner. But to have someone, who's verbally saying it, is always reminding of that is so important and so key. So thank you very much. We're going to go on to the next question, which is all about community involvement, and I'd really like to know how do your roles within different organisations, for example, like Haringey Shed, and your work as a writer, complement your efforts in youth advocacy and development?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think the first point, so with Haringey Shed, kind of last year, I was kind of blessed to be welcomed onto the board of Haringey Shed, which is an inclusive arts and theatre company that works in Haringey, as the name gives it away, but specifically supporting young people with quite profound learning and physical disabilities, and really kind of encouraging them to kind of put on pieces of creative work. And that was something that I felt in my professional career that I really wanted to do, to join a board of an organisation, to, I guess, kind of take that strategic look at an organisation, which I hadn't really had much experience at. And I think what I really learned, and I'm still learning from Haringey Shed, is they are embedded in the community. Parents for the last 20 years have trusted them with their young people, who sometimes would never trust their young people with any other organisation because of those needs and kind of, I guess, the confidence in knowing those needs will be supported. So that's a massive part of the community work that they do, building those relationships with different stakeholders and knowing that, that they are part of the community. Haringey in a couple of years will be the London Borough of Culture. That's going to bring so much more eyes and hopefully spending in the borough, and Haringey really wants to be the kind of beacon at that, where they're placed. They're literally down the road from White Hart Lane, so anytime there's a big show or something that goes on there's always a community aspect to that. Community festivals was a massive part that Haringey like to get involved in as well. So I think that really showed me that, regardless of the size of your organisation, you can be built on this community level, which I think is incredibly important. And then I think with the writing is something that I've done kind of on and off really since university. So kind of, since kind of my early 20s. And I started off kind of covering, music and different kind of artists kind of within different scenes. And I kind of changed a little bit in the way that I approached my writing. Actually, I realised that I had a platform and I wanted to give space for that. So I started really kind of digging a little bit into kind of subcultures and different kind of community organisations that kind of worked with different groups of people. One that really stands out to me, and actually I never thought I'd be speaking about in this context, but is a group called Neighbourhood Skate Club. And I covered them for a magazine, a skate magazine, a couple of years ago called Skateism, and essentially was a kind of female-led skateboarding crew, kind of based out of Victoria Park in East London. And they were kind of putting on community sessions for young women, specifically kind of school age, but also kind of early 20s as well. And was essentially inviting young women to kind of take part and get involved in skateboarding. So again, eliminating those barriers, which unfortunately the skateboarding scene can be quite male orientated and quite male dominated as well. And they were really looking to challenge that. So then that really kind of brought me to the idea of grassroots organisations and what do they look like? And, I've always kind of tried to cover that in my writing that, a community is what you make it. And I've met great people, both professionally and personally, that have been able to kind of build kind of creative communities based on lots of different things, whether that be kind of with youth work and charity, whether that be around skateboarding, whether that be around music or art and culture. I really think it's about the people. And that is kind of one thing that I would love to think that we are replicating here at the Roundhouse. Another part of my role is I oversee our community program as well. So we are kind of blessed with the resources we have, but also with the partners that we're able to build in the local community. So working with local organisations that support young migrants and refugees, working with young people with physical disabilities, working with young care leavers, young people that face the criminal justice system. So again, how do we, as this, massive building, which is a really steeped in history, hopefully, as we all well know, how do we use that to kind of impact our local community? And I think community starts with the people. All of those different roles that I spoke about has really kind of shown me the power of people, definitely.
Definitely, and I definitely agree, because as you said, sort of whether it's with, coming together and making a change, whether it's with sort of building a business or founding an idea, whether it's sort of leading on a creative project, it's only when you've got those people together and you're all sort of, you've got the same vision, you've got the same goal, you're all working to achieve that you can actually see that change and that impact being implemented. Definitely. Mental health is really important to us at Pick Up the Mic, and we love to share resources that can support your mental health. And that's why we are so glad to have today's sponsor. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get you started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live appointments when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't right for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at an affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/pickupthemic. I've also linked them down below in the description. So again, that's betterhelp.com/pickupthemic, MIC, and start your journey today. So we've come to the last question before we go on to passing the mic, where I won't obviously physically be passing the mic over to Nathan, but instead he's going to ask me a question, or as many questions as you'd like. But I think this is an important one. It's one looking to the future and also giving any advice. So the question is, what advice would you give to students and young professionals who are interested in youth work? And there's a second part, which is, what are your aspirations for the future of youth advocacy?
That's a really good question. I think in terms of people that kind of want to kind of get into the sector and in the industry, I would say experience. And I know sometimes, you can read CVs and kind of job descriptions that say you need 4+ years, 2+ years experience. I think experience is what you make it. I really encourage people to kind of go out there, look for ways that you can get involved in your local community, whether that's volunteering, whether that's doing sessional work, whatever that may be. Essentially, it's all about picking up those skills. And networking as well is also a massive kind of impact of that. I think, by meeting the right people, by going out there, by introducing yourself to as many different people as possible, can really have a massive impact later down the line. And I guess one thing that I've always said as well is being authentic. I have done this for 17 years now, and I would like to think that I've always remained true to myself. I'm not a person that tries to act down with the kids. That's not for me, and I don't think you'll go very far doing that as well. But at the same time, I've also not to act kind of like someone I'm not as well. And I think all I would ever encourage people to do is this something that you really want to do. chase it. Get out there, meet people, volunteer, gain that experience, because that is really a key kind of thing. You know, what you want to be able to do when you walk into, you know, whether that be interviews or if you do want to go into university to study kind of youth work as a kind of professional qualification, you're always going to get that question around experience and what does that look like. And while I don't think experience should be quantified by any stretch of the imagination, you should be able to articulate the experience that you have. And I think by having kind of impactful experience and experience that you can kind of talk on a great depth and level about, I think will take you really far.
Definitely. And for future aspirations or future vision for the
future aspirations, yeah, I think what I would love to see, and this is a real personal one, is that, you know, I'd love to see kind of the model of work that we do here replicated on a wider scale. I believe that there are so many organisations that work with young people but don't see themselves as a youth organisation. I'm not going to throw shade and put anyone's name out there, but there are lots of organisations that work with lots of young people but don't, by the very nature, don't consider themselves a youth organisation. And I think that what that does is that limits the work that they can do. I think, you know, all of the work I've spoken around in terms of the kind of pastoral support and youth work that you're able to deliver on a wide scale, I'd love to see that replicated. And, you know, that is something that I have spoken at great length with lots of different people about. And I think that is something that will have a real impact because, unfortunately, government funding is not being put in youth services, and the money that is going into youth services is kind of being ring-fenced by a lot of larger organisations. So if you are an organisation that works with young people, get youth workers in that space. Get youth workers working alongside those young people because, supporting creative journeys or whatever journey that they're on is one thing. Having youth workers in that space is another thing. An example of it, and I don't advocate for McDonald's by any stretch of the imagination, but, you know, their campaign and work that they did to put youth workers in McDonald's, I found incredible because they identified that they were working, their workforce was predominantly young people aged 18 to 21. So they had youth workers supporting the staff that were working at their restaurants. And I thought that was an example, like I said, not the best example, but was an example that, you know, if you are working with lots of young people, I think that youth work element needs to be there in some way, shape or form, definitely.
Definitely, I definitely agree because even as you mentioned, like when I was working at university, it was only because like my team manager was very much like an advocate for sort of just making sure everyone on her team was okay, everyone felt supported, everyone was sort of, you know, mentally doing well. But I know that that's not the case for everyone. Not everyone's able to do that, or everyone's in a position where they feel comfortable to do that. But like you said, like having youth workers that can support the delivery of your work is a really good way to ensure that the young people, whether they're working with you, whether they're sort of getting involved in the programs that you deliver or offer, is a really key way to sort of ensure that sort of not only personal and professional growth of your employees or the people that you work with, but also the people that you're supporting and delivering work for as well. Definitely. We're now going to go on to passing the mic. So I'm going to hand over to Nathan. Please let me know any questions you want to ask.
I've got a few. Now I like having the power. I guess one of my first questions to you would kind of, I guess, reflecting on your life journey. And has there been or can you identify any moments in your life where that kind of that impact of kind of youth work or social work or that kind of positive role model really kind of affected you and kind of you can talk about?
Yeah. I think the biggest one sort of to start with was my GCSE and A-level like drama teachers and my physics teacher for A-levels were both really supportive with my university sort of journey. So it came to A-levels and like I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I was really having a tough time with physics and my drama teacher was just like, oh, you know, like, are you okay? You're doing well? And she checked in like repeatedly throughout, like from my the whole time at GCSEs and when I was in year 7. And she was just like making sure that I was doing okay. And then when I was telling her like the tough time with physics and how it meant that I was sort of struggling to manage the workload with drama and things like that, she ensured that like there was a room that if I needed to like study in between classes, I could just go there, study for a bit, take it easy, sort of away from like everyone else. I'm not getting distracted. I can just focus on my work. But then she was also sort of worked proactively for me to work with my physics teacher to sort of figure out, okay, what do I want to do once I leave A levels? And it was a simple conversations of like, what are you interested in? How can you sort of like, what do you think the career for this might be? What do you like with all the sort of A levels you were doing? Because like people find it weird when I tell them that I did drama, history, and physics because there's no real connection between the three. But they were all subjects that I really enjoyed, and that led to me eventually going to university and like from undergraduate doing environmental sciences. And then I talk about my university, my old manager, who managed the STEM program there, she was very much the same thing. I met her in my third year of uni. I wanted to do a year placement and I got a placement with her. And she was very much just like, okay, cool. So what do you want to get out of this placement? What do you want to do when you graduate? What do you want to sort of show that you've done and achieved with this? So when you're graduated, you've got this experience and this knowledge. And then she very much was like a huge support, even to this day, both with sort of creative things that I've done, like with Pick Up the Mic, and with other works that I've done, but she's also been a huge support in supporting my personal development as well. So sort of we're coming up to a year when it happened, but on last year I graduated from my master's and I did a speech, and it was only through sort of that connection with her that she was able to sort of help to push me in that direction to go apply for the opportunity when she sort of researched and said that there was an opportunity to do that. But she was very much just like, okay, cool. Okay, after we both finished work, just come over, like we'll work through the speech, we'll practice it. It was something that I didn't tell my family, I didn't tell my friends, no one really knew about it. But she said something that really stuck with me, which was just like, when my family see me, they'll only, for the most part, just see me as you know, their brother or their son. But she said, this is an opportunity where you can sort of showcase to your family, you can showcase to your friends that you're more than sort of just the face value or that interaction that they see. So to me, that was a huge lesson on just essentially sometimes you don't need to share once you've got a big opportunity, you don't need to sort of shout from the rooftops or almost boast about it. Sometimes you can be very humble in your approach. And then when it comes out and it happens, people are more sort of impacted because they're just like, wow, you had this big thing that you were going to do and you didn't tell any of us. Like, how were you able to keep it a secret and things like that? But more importantly, it's just like they're able to see, wow, you know, you're actually doing so much more than we ever thought. So yeah, those would be my two key ones. So yeah.
That's really good. And I think what it does also explain and actually probably feeds into one of the biggest things that I've kind of learned and kind of, you know, I've picked up on the journey is that youth work or the way you work alongside young people is not an instant gratification. You know, it's not something that, you know, you work at something and, you know, you see the effects that day. That very rarely happens. And if you said that it did happen, I wouldn't believe you. I think, you know, youth work is something that you will say something to someone and, you know, it sounds like, you know, in the stories that you've spoken about there, it may not resonate with you in that very moment, but there will come that point, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line where that will mean a lot to someone and they'll reflect on that journey. You know, they will say, I worked alongside that young people, or that guy came into my school, or I met this person in this group. And I think that is also a really big thing to understand with youth work is that if you're going in for instant gratification, that's not going to happen. 100%. But, you know that your words will have effect.
Definitely.
And then my second question to you, if it's not too kind of grandiose, was kind of for you, you know, still being a young person really and kind of looking at the kind of world around you. What do you think is the biggest risk for young people at the moment?
Ooh, that's a very good question.
I thought I'd come at you hard. Come at you hard with that one.
I think it's the idea that like you can't achieve your dreams or that you have to sort of wait until certain things line up for your dreams to come true. Because that's not to say that that's not the case. Sometimes it does sort of things just line up perfectly for people. But for a lot of people, they think if they want to go and pursue something that whether their family isn't very sort of sees a potential career aspect from it, or whether their friends sort of think it's a bit weird or don't necessarily agree with them doing it, they feel as though having that sort of like wanting to pursue that is sort of a bad thing or something that they should put off. But I think the biggest thing for me that I sort of learned or took from, or the biggest learning from that risk and sort of having done that sometimes is that essentially there's two things. The first thing is the people that we used to sort of distribute the audio version of the podcast called Buzzsprout, they did this really cool video talking about like why people are nervous about getting into podcasting and releasing that first episode. And they said that sometimes you'll be so worried that, you know, your school friends are going to watch it and sort of comment and judge you. And he said for the most part, he was just basically saying, like, who cares? Like, you put it out there, you've committed to something and you've delivered. You should focus on that and see that you've actually done the work and sort of be proud of that and just focus on that. But the second thing was also the idea of you never want to wake up one day and feel like you've been living someone else's life because other people said, you know, you should keep things safe. You shouldn't necessarily try and put yourself out there and take risks. And I think even from like speaking to friends recently about stuff, I was saying like with Pick Up the Mic, I know I can afford to take certain risks with things because I'm at a stage where, you know, I'm living at home. I'm not dependent on, like, I don't have people who are dependent necessarily on me. I can take certain risks, which is not to say that people should, you know, go out there, sell everything and then start up a company. But that's to say that, you know, sometimes you just got to like put yourself out there and just get started. And it's never an easy thing. It sounds a lot easy. It sounds very simple. And I know sometimes when people say it, they can make it seem like there's never like any worry or anxiety that they happen. But even with the first episode of this podcast, which sort of launched Pick Up the Mic, it was the same thing. It was three of us. None of us had ever done podcasting or audio editing before. It was, like I said, during the pandemic. We were recording on Zoom. And we were all just like, we don't know if people are going to like the three of us talking about this, but we're going to talk about a subject, see how it goes. And if people like it, we'll continue. So I'd say the biggest risk is believing that you can't sort of achieve and go for your dreams. And the biggest sort of reminder I can say to that is just get started and see where things go.
I love that. That's great.
Thank you very much.
It's a good answer.
Thank you. But yeah, we're now going to go on to our MT of the month, which you can probably guess from the amazing work that we've heard today, is Roundhouse Creative Studios. They support, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 18 to 24-year-olds?
Oh, we do a lot more than that.
They do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? This is the first time I've ever done this, but I think it'd be best to hear it from you. So please, let us know.
Of course. The Roundhouse Creative Studios. We are a creative space in Chalk Farm in Camden in northwest London in an iconic venue. And we have a number of different offers available to young people aged 11 to 25. We have a number of creative projects that can be based anything from kind of music to performing arts to kind of broadcast and digital for 11 to 14-year-olds, 15, 17-year-olds and 18 to 25-year-olds. But we also have creative studios. So we have a number of rehearsal, DJ and production rooms available to young people aged 13 to 25. So that's the only slight difference. You need to be 13 to hold a membership. And is a really affordable offer, I believe.
Definitely.
It's £25 a year for a membership. Rooms can cost anywhere between £1 and £4 for a 2-hour slot. We're open 7 days a week. You can bring in guests as long as they fit within that age bracket. And it's actually just a really nice space. I think, you know, over the last 2.5 years, you know, being able to welcome more and more young people back, I think, you know, we've been able to create this kind of community amongst the studios, which I think is continuing to grow. And now having that impact to the youth workers is just another element to that. But one thing also to point out as well that we do also offer financial assistance. So if that £25 or those £1, £2, £4 are a little bit too much, that's completely fine. We offer financial assistance. We can support young people with the cost of the studios, the membership, travel to and from the Roundhouse. And I think our biggest ethos is just about getting people in the building. Get in, come in, book a tour, come and have a look at the space. Whether you're at the very beginning of your journey or you're a little bit more seasoned and you just need somewhere to kind of hone your skills, the creative studios and all of the projects that we offer are just an amazing place for young people to be.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I realised actually I didn't ask you this when I was asking the questions, but I would love to know what has been your favourite programme that you've...
At the Roundhouse?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one. I will shout out, and this is definitely recency bias, so This doesn't take away from any other project. Please know that. But we have a project, a long-standing project that has been running for a number of years called Behind the Lens, which is a project for 18 to 25-year-olds, specifically looking to get that first step within the kind of broadcast digital field. So it was a group of 10 young people that work with us on a kind of 7-week program. They come to us for 3 days a week, kind of 9 to 5 days, and they get an experience to do lots of different things. They created a video for one of our events. They did lots of filming and portfolios. But the biggest thing they did was probably about 3 weeks ago now for our Roundhouse Poetry Slam final, which was hosted in the main space. The young people from Behind the Lens actually live streamed that and were the ones responsible for putting it on YouTube. And for me, it was that real kind of full circle moment that we had young people on the stage being filmed by young people and live streamed. And I just thought that was just an incredible moment. And to see them, it's a very long day that day. I think, everyone kind of got off about 11:30 that day. But to see the kind of looks of like, wow, I've just live streamed an event put it out on YouTube, and we had however many people watching from all over the world. For me, I really like to see that kind of outcome driven project. While I don't always believe that the outcome is the only outcome, when there is a creative outcome, you see it in people's behavior, the way that they change, the way that they feel that confidence that they have done something and they've contributed something. So that's definitely a recency bias. But the reason why I mention it so much is because I was the one kind of working alongside them pastorally, kind of a youth worker at length on that project. So I had the opportunity to meet with them throughout the project, kind of talk about their own journeys and how they were finding it. And from speaking to them at the beginning of the project, where maybe there were definitely some kind of elements around kind of confidence and teamwork and leadership, by that kind of midpoint, and by seeing it in the end, that had skyrocketed. And I think, it just shows if you put the time and effort into young people and their kind of journeys, the results will be endless.
That's perfect, man. Thank you very much. We've now come to the takeaway section, which, funnily enough, I've been joking about. We're not sponsored by a food delivery app, but we might be getting a snack sponsor for this. So keep an eye on the space.
Love that.
But yes, we want you to have a message to go home with. So Nathan, we talked about a lot today. But if there was one message that you think our audience, whether they're watching, whether they're listening, should go home with and sort of take with them today, what would be that message?
I think actually I'm going to kind of steal a little bit of your little bit as well, is kind of talking about that idea of taking risks, and knowing that if you start to take a path that may not be the only path that you take. Learning and reflecting on my own journey from coming of a place where I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was willing to give things a go and try things. And I think that is what I will always kind of push, is that kind of giving yourself grace to experiment and take risks, try new things, try new experiences, because ultimately that is how you will grow and develop. And some of the best youth workers that I've ever worked with have that breadth of experience, whether that be within the youth and community field, whether that be working alongside young people, whether that even be within the creative sector as well. That they have taken on skills that they have been able to kind of transfer and bring to their current work. So yeah, I think I would definitely encourage people to try things, to not be afraid, to give things a go, and to sometimes know that it's not working. And that's completely fine. Not everything works the first time. And I think, by trusting in yourself and trusting in the process, I think, just stay in the course. I think definitely is one thing I would encourage and always push amongst young people, but also amongst older people as well. So yeah.
Oh, that's perfect, man. Wonderful words to close the episode. And without further ado, thank you very much, Nathan, for being on. It's been great to not only learn more about your journey, but also the incredible work that you do here at the Roundhouse. Before we sort of go into the outro and things like that, if people want to connect with you, maybe they want to know a bit more about the creative studios. Maybe they want to get involved and support it. Maybe they want to get involved and even apply. What links, websites, social media should people...
That's very good. I haven't prepped for this bit. In terms of finding out more about the Roundhouse, just type the Roundhouse Creative Studios into Google. It comes up with the website. You can find loads more of information. There's some email links there to get in contact directly with the youth work team. Please feel free to drop us an email. No question is a silly question. Trust me when I say that. If you're thinking it, someone else is definitely thinking it as well. We're always up for arranging tours of the spaces and showing people around. So even if it's professionals that are working alongside young people, please feel free to reach out, and we'll definitely try and get that kind of in the books. In terms of LinkedIn, Nathan Tuft on LinkedIn, always kind of talk. I'm trying to use LinkedIn a lot more. So I'm always talking about my journey on there. But yeah, that's great.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. And thank you to you, our wonderful audience, for coming back to another episode of The Student Guide. If you like this, a like, comment, and subscribe is always appreciated. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any other episodes of The Student Guide or any of the other episodes on the Pick Up the Mic channel, please click the notification bell at the bottom of the video. If you want to receive some merch, you want to support the podcast, yes, we have started to produce merch. Please do check out the link below. If you're a Patreon member, you do get free access to that. But yes, please do check that out. And finally, if you want to... Oh, actually, before I say finally, there's one more. If you do want to become a Patreon member or YouTube channel member, the links are down below. We really appreciate all the support. So please do get that. As I mentioned, Patreon members do get discounts on our merch. And then very finally, if you want to check out our other channels, we have 3. So we have the Two Maesters channel, where Joshua and Morgan dive into the world of sci-fi and fantasy with a new sort of world to discuss each episode. If you want to check out our anime podcast, please check out the Senseis of Anime channel. And finally, if you want to learn a bit more about the world of gaming, you want to see what organizations and individuals are not only sort of discussing the world of gaming, but sort of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within that space, then please do check out Pick Up the Controller. All of these are at the top of our YouTube channel. So if you go to the main Pick Up the Mic YouTube channel, you'll see all the links there. But yeah, we're going to close today's chapter of The Student Guide. We're going to be back with another episode with another guest speaker the next time. So that's bye from us here. Have a wonderful day. Look after yourselves, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.